Good morning, everybody. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Thanks, everybody. We do have proof of notice, and we have a quorum tonight with the three of us here. So saying that, I'm going to introduce Jerry Evans, our general manager, and he'll start this meeting off tonight. Jerry?
I don't even think I need a microphone. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome, really good. So, want to welcome everybody to 2019 budget draft. Big day for us. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce.
Jerry, not to interrupt, they're not going to hear you at home, so you're going to have to use a mic. Sorry.
Before we get started, I wanted to introduce a few key people here with us today. My assistant general manager, Kimberly Bruges, I think most of you know her. Our division manager, Region 2, Zulima Mendoza. And then our geo accountant, Ahmad, and I'm not even going to try to go with his last name, but Kablawi. Ahmad, so what we thought we would do is Ahmad's going to briefly go over the balance sheet to give you an idea of where we're at today in our cash position. And then when he's done, I'm going to go over the draft budget that I think everybody has a handout. If you don't have one, they're up here at the table. Ahmad?
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. A little bit about my background. I'm a certified public accountant, certified management accountant for about 10 years now. I've been with KW Property Management for about 3 years. I take over big accounts like yours, and hopefully I've been doing a good job for the last 3 months, So basically my part of the presentation is just to take you through the cash position of the association as of September 30th, which is the last financials we have published. I would like for somebody to just take, can you go to the cash position, because I did something in financial position here, to that sheet. The yellow one, the first yellow one. Okay, so you used a different version. Okay, that's fine. Well, I'm going to talk about the financial position. Well, for an associate, the industry standard for a financial position of an association of this size is about 1 month of operating expense. Per your 2017 audited financial statements, you closed 2017 with about $326,000 of a deficit. And that's due, obviously everybody knows it's due to the hurricane expenses and what have you. Then the association passed a special assessment to recover some of these operating funds. As of 9/30, based on the last numbers that I looked before I came here, you have about $1.2 million of surplus, which includes the $993,000 of the special assessment funds that was passed this year. Now, this is the other $300,000 basically is coming from other areas of the 2018 budget that hasn't either materialized or maybe some areas where they were able to do some savings. So basically, it's just a reflection of a great management by the board, by the general manager. Hopefully, by the end of the year, we keep this going, so we end the year with a great surplus. So like I said, for an association like yours, 1 month of operating surplus is considered great, So that means you have a cushion, in case something major happen, or what have you. So that's the operating funds. You have two other funds on your balance sheet, which is your reserve and your working capital. Let's talk about reserve. Now, per the last reserve study that you have, your reserve is fully funded. You have $400,000 coming into 2019 budget. $300,000 is going to come through the maintenance fees that you guys are going to be paying on a quarterly basis. Another $100,000 is going to come from the capital contribution, which is the resales that you guys collect whenever there's a new home sold. That's a board decision, They're going to be continuing to do that so they can level up the budget, so there's no major increases going forward. Based on the projection of this year and going forward or past years, you've been very consistent, of collecting this fund, so it's going to be always coming in. As of September 30th, again, your reserve, we projected your reserve to end this year with about $1.653 million. The $400,000 that is put into the budget for next year means that you are fully funded. About working contribution from the resale, you begin the year with a $1,170,000. the annual contribution year to date is about $108,000. So when we say that the board decided to put $100,000 away from the capital contribution into your reserve, it's very legitimate, you know. The funds are there, it's being collected. We looked at the past 3 or 4 years, that same amount has been coming in, you know. So there's about, how many sales, how many homes sales you do every?
Between 80 and 120.
So this money will keep flowing in, you know, so we don't have any uncertainty about that, you know. So basically, overall, you know, you're in a great position, closing the year last year with $326,000 of a deficit. You're gonna end the 2018 with about $1 million of a surplus, you know. Your budget, obviously, Jerry is gonna be talking about your budget, which the board, again, you know, based on the results of 2018, you know, they felt like, oh, we can move on to 2019 with a flat budget, no increase whatsoever. So that's the great news. So everything here we're presenting today is really great, you know, and you should be very happy about that, you know, and hopefully we continue the trend, you know, and we're relying on Jerry, obviously, and his team, you know, to continue this positive, you know, contribution, you know, toward the financial position of the association. That's basically it, my part. So if you guys have any question, I think after Jerry presents his budget, we are open for any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ahmad. And as Ahmad said, thank you. As Ahmad pointed out, you will have 2 opportunities to make comments. The first opportunity you'll have is after my presentation. I'm going to ask the board to make a motion and a second to approve the budget, and at that time, we'll open it up to the floor for comment. And then after the budget is approved, before we adjourn, we'll have an open forum if you want to make any more comments after that. So with that said, as Ahmad informed you guys, and I think probably everybody here realizes, the proposed budget is flat on the assessment rates going into 2019. So in other words, you won't have an increase next year. That said, we'll go on, and the way I'm going to go over this is really briefly hit the highlights. If you have a question, you might jot it down, and again, you will have an opportunity but before we vote on the budget. So the first thing I just wanted to point out is the maintenance fee staying flat. There's a little bit of a rounding in there, about $2,000, but out of $7 million, that's a small rounding number. So your assessment rate will remain the same. And then basically what had happened is we spent proposed to spend $53,000 more. Well, there's $53,000 more income. It's not through assessment income, it's through ancillary income, so other income, which you'll see. So I pointed out a couple of those areas. The first one is car wash income. It's budgeted flat from the 2018 projection. It's gone down a little bit from the 2018 approved budget, but then, you know, it's pretty apparent that was simply an over budget because we've had no, except for the hurricane, there's no other significant variables that would have dented that income that much. So we decided to go ahead and budget according to the 2018 actual going into, and that's a projected number. And what we did is we took the first 9 months of actuals and projected the next 3 months out to come up with this projected number. And on the second page, you'll see another area is the gas station income is $218,000, up from $155,500. And it's historically a wash, and you'll see in a minute when we go to the expenses that number in the past has been almost the same. And this year, we decided to raise gasoline by 1 penny to make sure that we never spend more than we make. Then the next highlighted area is newsletter advertising. We historically have spent around $20,000 or $21,000 on the newsletter production, and we decided to start the trend of advertising to help pay for the newsletter. And because we're going to have advertising, the newsletter is going to grow. So instead of the $21,000 actual we've seen, we projected expenses to be $25,000. You'll see that in a minute. But what we decided to do is I've worked in areas where we've paid for the newsletter 100%. But we have a little bit of competition with our directory, which this is probably the last year of the hard print directory. We'll go to electronic. probably in 2020, but the advertising dollars will be gained from essentially the same folks for the directory. So we only charged Noel, our lifestyle team, with generating 25% of the cost. So this year we're going to set her goal at 6,250. She seems extremely confident she'll be able to get that. And then next year we'll go to 50%. The next year after that we'll charge her with bringing in 75%. And then so we'll gradually get up there after 4 years to where in 4 or 5 years the newsletter will be paid for. And then social activity receipts. This is a wash item as well. Noelle has done a fantastic job, and she continues to have the confidence that she will meet her goal. So her expense, you'll see in a minute, is $135,000, and her income is $135,000. And to my knowledge, she's met that goal of at least breaking even for the last few years. Going on to the next page, audit and tax preparation. The only reason, there's really not a big variance. The only reason I highlighted this is I wanted to take the opportunity to make sure everybody knew that annually you guys do have a professional auditor come in to review the books. The next item is bad debt expense. And as you can see, the 2018 budget was $8,700. We're projecting $21,000. And you say, well, we only spent $900. Well, that number comes in when the board makes a motion to approve writing bad debt off. And where that bad debt comes from, it's homeowner assessments, and it has to be uncollectible. And how does it become uncollectible? Generally through bankruptcy or through foreclosure. And it just so happens the board has not written anything off in a board meeting this year, but we already have a sizable amount to write off next month, and we project in 2020 again to be conservative, $21,000. What that represents, it seems like a lot of money, but if you look at a $7 million revenue stream, it represents 5 houses at a full 12 months assessment, basically, is what that number is. The next item, miscellaneous contingency. There's $40,000 budgeted last year. We only spent $4,300. Well, we're putting $40,000 in there again. And the good thing is for you to know, it's your money. If we don't spend it, it stays with you. It stays with the association. But we have a couple of things going on. One, we've talked to our reserve advisors, and while Ahmad said we are contributing $400,000 to our reserves, the past boards we know have contributed other monies, and this line item was one area where they contributed in previous years. So we believe that there is a potential that we may make a contribution to one of the line items. I believe it's tree trimming that goes in the reserve study, and that's where that money may be funded from. And then we also have our amendment rewrite that we may need a little bit of money for too. But again, it's a contingency line item. Again, you're looking at $7 million, $40,000 is a very low amount. Next item is legal expense collections. And again, while this isn't a huge variance, I wanted to highlight it to explain to you, we put in $15,000 of expense, but in reality, we expect to have a $15,000 positive variance. And the reason being is we just contracted at the last board meeting with the attorney, with the firm that pays for the collection fees up front. And whereas in previous years, we've had to pay for the collection fees, then after the attorney collects from the debtor, then we get reimbursed, and that reimbursement is that $15,000. But again, with this new firm that we just engaged with this month, we hopefully anticipate this to be a $15,000 positive variance. Next page, property management fees. As you can see from the 2018 budget, it went down significantly, and I would say the savings there was mostly in part from the negotiated contract that your board had with my management company, and that they were able to secure 50% of management fees for the first 12 months, which is a great job by your board. And then this number also reflects 50% going through the first 6 months of the year, and then 100% thereafter. So that number, that actual number in 2019 will go up in 2020 when the contract stays 100% for 12 months. And the next line item I have, and there wasn't really, it's utilities, and there wasn't really any one utility that had a significant variance, but I would say that the savings we're seeing there, is probably for two reasons. One, a slightly conservative budget last year, but also you guys have an engineering committee that I'm learning more about. I don't think Nick is here, but we have a few people, or Graham is on the committee as well, and they've been doing some really good work in saving us a lot of money with utilities. So kudos to those guys. The next item, security software system and computer. This expense represents the security camera system at the main gate and also at the town center, and we're basically performing some upgrades going into 2020. And then the next page under town center, the first line item is office computers and website. And again, so there's a few of these line items, not many, 3 or 4 I think, that we up the budget. It's not big dollars, but percentage-wise, it was up 20, 25%, sometimes 30%, because we found a lot of I don't want to say deferred maintenance. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but the need for a lot of upgrades. There hasn't been a lot of money spent on technology in the community for quite a while, so you'll see a little bit of that through this budget, and then it'll certainly plateau going into 2020. And then holiday decorations, you'll see we budgeted $10,500 in 2018, and we're projecting $30,000 in 2018 because the board about 2 meetings ago approved holiday decoration upgrades and entered into a 3-year contract. So this number represents, and you'll see this number consistently over the next couple of years. So that's a contract amount going into 2019. Then here's the expense on the newsletter side that I was speaking to. It's $25,000, and again, $6,250, 25% of that will be offset on the revenue side from Noel's selling advertising in the newsletter. And then another, electricity, we separated electricity out for the town center from the utilities. We wanted a separate center for the town center. And again, I believe the explanation for the variance is the same, a little bit conservative, and then the committee's done a good job for us there as well in saving some money. Going on to insurance, and the hurricane, I think we saw a pretty big raise this year, and we may even next year because of how the insurance companies are being affected from the hurricane. But this number represents actuals. Our policy started July 1, so this number represents 6 months of next year at the same rate because it's a 12-month rate, and then it represents 6 months at a 5% increase, and that 5% is a projection. It could go up a little bit or down a little bit for next year. And then golf carts, we need one more golf cart. We purchased a couple this year, and we got one donated. And again, that was another area that money hadn't been spent. We had a cart out there about 15 years old. It was comical in a way. But we only need one more, and then we'll have a brand new fleet, and you guys won't have to worry about that as a community for quite a while. And HVAC maintenance and repairs, again, I think it was a combination of maybe it was a little bit under budgeted, but also some deferred maintenance needed there. So we went up from a budget of $92,000 to $12,000. It's still a little bit less than we actually project to spend this year, but it's more than the conservative budget was for 2018. And then last on this page, building supplies, maintenance, and repair. This line item was significantly under budget in 2018, and 2019 costs are a lot more in line with reality and what we actually spent this year.
Jerry, can I interrupt for a second?
Yes, please.
So the public knows, there was an evaluation of the property done by KW. Their engineer came out. There was 54 pages of deficiencies on equipment. And Rex and the crew and myself and the engineering committee have been going through most of them. We probably have 80% of them complete now, and that's why you see the added expense. If we found something broke, like the pool lights, 2 lights were working out of 12, we repaired them. We want to bring everything up to grade, and then we'll maintain it from that point on. So that's why there was an increase this year. Just stuff that hasn't been done, we had to do it. Sorry, Jerry.
No, thank you. And the next item is playground equipment, and we're talking about the playground right over here next to Bocce. And I don't think that playground's probably been looked at for quite a while. And so we are tasking Rex, our maintenance director, with becoming a certified playground inspector early in the year. So he'll be doing a thorough inspection of the equipment, and we have a
See
little.
him playing out there.
Little bit of money in there to take care of some maintenance needs. And then the next page, pickleball courts, repair and maintenance. Really, the only reason it's a variance is because we didn't have that money in there. Everybody knows the pickleball is new, and really this money is in there for things like potential supplies, bulletin board, that type of thing. It's a pretty conservative budget. We may not use all of it. And then the next item, the gas pumps and repairs. We stayed flat on the budget, but as you can see in the projected total this year, it's just over $23,000, and that was due mainly in part to the hurricane. And so there were a lot of hurricane-related repairs to the gas station. And with no hurricane coming next year, knock on wood, we think we can get by with the $6,000 that was originally budgeted in 2018. And then on the gas purchase, we talked about that a little bit on the income. You can see it's $195,000, which is a little bit less than the income. I think the income was $218. Someone can double check me, but so that keeps us a little bit ahead of the game with the gasoline. On the tree trimming in the common area, we budgeted $176,000 in 2018. We only spent $143,000. And then next year, we're only thinking we're going to spend $125,000, and that's just because of the hurricane. In a weird way, we did more than we would normally do on the volume, so we didn't need quite as much money going into 2019. Moving right along on the next page, the irrigation repair parts and labor. Again, we're looking at some deferred maintenance here. We budgeted $250,000. We spent $281,000. And we're going to 285. We still have maybe a year or two more, maybe even a little bit longer than that, of upgrading some of the irrigation systems that are out there. But you shouldn't see a significant increase rather than all in 1 year. We're trying to just average it out to a little bit of an increase each year. And then lake maintenance, this line item was over budgeted in 2018, and the cost in 2019 a little bit higher to accommodate additional infrastructure maintenance on the lakes. On erosion control, we budgeted $30,000. We only projected to spend $15,000 this year. We're budgeting $20,000, and basically the 2018 projected, the $15,000 represents 6 of the erosion areas to be repaired, and then the 2019 expense represents 8 of those areas. On mulch, $300,000 was the 2018 budget, and you can see we didn't spend any, and we don't anticipate spending any money until early 2019. On plant replacement, I don't know if deferred plant maintenance is actually a term, but you guys all, most of it is your neighborhoods, your homes. It's very little or less of this is common area. And what we found, the new board has found, and I've found since I've been out here, is that there's a lot of issues out there. So we budgeted $275. We're projecting to spend around $240, but we're going to up that a little bit more and go to $300 and really knock it out. I think everybody realizes the job that the landscape company is doing, and we're just continuing that trend. And on our last page, road, gutter, and sidewalk repairs, we actually projecting almost double from what we budgeted, and we just feel like this is an under budget number. And again, areas that haven't been taken care of in the past, and we just need to put a little bit more money towards those repairs. And lastly, the transfer to replacement fund, basically your reserve contribution is set at $400,000. And then I think what'll happen is after we get that solidified with Reserve Advisor, we'll be meeting with the mod, and then we will announce this to the community, I'm sure in a duly called board meeting, you'll, if not December, definitely in January. So again, hold your questions right now. What I am going to do is ask the board to make a motion to approve this budget as presented, and then Matt will call for a second, and once he gets a second, we will open it up to the floor for comment before we vote all in favor. So Matt, do you want to?
So I'd entertain a motion to approve the budget as presented.
I'll second that.
Oh, they have to hear a motion first.
I'll make that motion. I thought we were making that motion.
And I will second that motion.
Already with the motion seconded, do we have any comments from the floor? Turn that mic on, Ron. Turn your mic on, please. Button's in the front.
Ron Sterer, Xenon Way. I'd like to see a budget item to cover sidewalk mold cleaning and removal.
Thank you.
Ken George, 15136 Estuary Circle. We touched a little bit on it. If I understand correctly, we have an operating budget and we have a capital reserve. Is that correct?
Well, we actually have three accounts, and Ahmad can elaborate more: operating, and then we have a reserve fund, and then we have capital resale, or a capital fund.
So which fund, where would long-term replacement costs come from? For the roads, the bridges?
It
Where
comes
does that come
from reserve.
Okay. It doesn't hit directly on here, but it does. I assume we're funding, from what you said, into that capital fund out of our budget this year. Can you give us some indication of what the total amount in that fund was at the end of 2017, projected 2018, and projected 2019? Is that fund growing, is what I'm looking for.
Well, you close the year 2017 with $1.8 million.
Okay.
We anticipate to end the year with about 1.653.
So it's actually going down by 200,000.
It goes down because you have a pooled reserve, so it depends on the life expectancy of the items in the reserve.
Right.
So it happens that this year you have more items to be replaced, which you're going to be funding into your reserve next year, but they're not going to be replaced again till 10, 15 years from now. So that fund is going to, that's how it works with the pooled reserve, you know?
Okay. And I assume if...
It will fluctuate, just
Not
like-
everything's up to date on our website, but I was able to find a report there by, I assume, an engineering firm or whatever, that went through our entire facility and then projected out certain, let's call them construction activities over a period of time. And with typical timeframes for when that might have been done. And I think the board is following that from what I can see, putting a lot of that. But here's my concern. One of the real benefits of living in Village Walk is all the number of bridges, the lakes, the roads. We have about, just on the circumference, 4 miles of roads, add in latitude 5 miles road. Okay, what are road lifespans in Florida? 30 to 75 years. Bridges, maybe that long, maybe not. We got a lot of bridges. And from my experience as a civil engineer, to redo a road, just to, overlay it, you're looking at $750,000 to $1 million a mile. Okay, now everybody in this room may be dead by then, but at some point in time,
I'm not planning.
we're going to have a bridge deck that's got to be replaced.
Matt will answer.
We're going to have roads that have to be replaced. So is the intent of the board to do special assessments at that time? Or, and this is why I'm bringing it up now and I didn't wait to the end, you're looking at a flat budget, but we all have seen infrastructure deteriorating significantly around America. Would it be wise to increase, our fees by 1 or 2% and throw a little bit more money into the reserve funds? Thank you.
Okay. This may be long, but we'll try to make it short. There's about $4 million set aside in the reserve study over a period of time just for asphalt. So every component has been evaluated, and by the national standards, they put a number on it, what it would cost to replace it. That's done in a chart over 30 years. And the reserve analyst comes up with a number that you have to contribute to the reserves in order to meet that requirement over those periods of time. Like this year, we did the refreshing inside and the pool furniture. Those monies were already in the reserves. Okay, so they anticipated the need, and we contributed each year. This year, we're doing the same thing. We're going to contribute the 384 and 400,000 in 19. But we also have the resale capital contribution money. So if we, instead of penalizing people to stay here the longest, because that contribution will increase each year, and when you look out 30 years, we'll be putting $1 million into that contribution in order to meet our reserves. Right now, we're putting 400,000. So you can see the increase. And that penalizes people to stay here the longest. So what the board has come up with, and Guy actually brought up the idea, because he's on part of the finance crew, we're going to take some of the capital contribution money each year and contribute that to the reserves to flatten that somehow so we don't have more than a 2% increase each year in the amount that we have to contribute to the reserves. So, and everything, bridges, all that stuff is taken in consideration. Our mechanical equipment, the roof, they take every structure, every piece of equipment into consideration in that analyst. So it's all there, but what we're trying to do is flatten the budget out. Now this year, fortunately, we didn't do mulch, so we're hoping that there's going to be a surplus, which there should be, and that surplus money will also go to the reserve contribution, and that will also help flatten out our needs to contribute over time. So if you put money up front, that's less you need over a long period of time. You know how amortization works. So we are looking at that, and I appreciate you bringing the question up. And we do have a full chart. Guy helped us work on it also. And you'll see how that flattens out the number over a period of time. But we're using $100,000 each year from the reserve resale capital contribution if we don't have surplus. If we have surplus, we'll use that and not have to take out of the resale. So either way, we're going to flatten that somehow so that our HOA fees don't reflect a large increase each year just for contribution to the reserves.
I'd just like to give a little more background on that. We have an active reserve replacement study going on now. Reserve Advisors is the name of the company. They haven't finalized it, but we have had many reviews of it. So it's a current study of what our replacement costs are going to be with an engineer's projection of what that expense will be, and that goes out 30 years. So Ahmad has also been involved in that process, as well as the Finance Committee and the board members. So we are comfortable with these projections for the short term. We also are building in a new reserve replacement study in 2 years, which is a part of our ongoing program. So it's something that we're looking at closely. We are seeing year-to-year fluctuations in the reserve balance, but we have additional contribution each year that is scheduled. Our resale capital, for instance, that's going to generate $122,000 with our new fee next year. We also have any favorable variance that we have in 2018, which the board can vote to move into the capital account. At this point, we're looking at approximately $350,000 under the budget for results. So that's another source of revenue to go into that replacement fund, so that we do not see that it's necessary to increase the fee in 2019 in order to provide a conservative pool of funds available for our replacements.
Hope that answers your question. And contact us anytime you want. I'll show you the spreadsheet on that if you like. Contact me anytime you want. We'll show you the spreadsheet on that.
Pat Antonini, Danny Oates Drive. First of all, I want to congratulate the board and KW on all that's been accomplished and the ability to still keep this budget flat. My second question, though, is if you recall last year, we would see the HOA fees by type of home or style. And we did have an increase last year that was not implemented in the first quarter and spread over the last 3 quarters. So with that being the case, from a simple dollars perspective, my last quarter payment is actually going to be higher than my first quarter new payment going forward with a flat budget. I just want to make sure that that is the case, because our increase last year was split over 3 quarters rather than over the entire 4 quarters.
You have that thing? I don't think I have that sheet with me, Pat, but whatever the fees were per quarter last year, if you take the total
Total,
sum
yep.
divided by 4, that will be the fee
Okay.
this year. Nothing is changing. Your
Okay.
fees are staying the same.
And I want to just make sure you understand my question. I think you do. You know, our entire increase was over a 3-quarter period last year rather than a 4-quarter period. So, right. So what I'm paid for this year is the same I'm going to be paying next year. Okay. Thank you very much.
I thought I had it here, but I don't have it here. The one time I don't bring it.
Maybe you can clarify something for me. It's got Hurricane Irma income of 993,000.
Yep.
Where on here is the expense?
No, that's your special assessment.
Right.
That's your special assessment that was passed this year, the 993.
Oh, I understand that, but where's the expense?
Before the end of the year, we'll have a total list of expenses itemized for you. We're waiting for the rest of the bills to come in still.
Well, shouldn't you have it projected?
Well, if you project it, you're going to do the same thing the last board did. They projected, and that's how they came up with an assessment. We're doing an actual.
But Rick, I just want to clarify this point. At the end of 2017, before this board was involved, there was an accrual made for projected hurricane expenses as part of the year-end budget of 2017, and what we have spent this year has come and been charged against that accrual amount. So it was reflected in the numbers at the 2017 end of year.
And I will add another comment that out of the $993,000, you have about $600,000 or $550 that was spent in 2017. That's why you ended the year in 2017 with a deficit, because that money was used from your operating. Now, the auditor on the audit financial statements, if you get to look at it, you see that there's the difference between the 993 and what was actually spent in 2018 was accrued for potential expenses from Hurricane Irma. I have already generated a schedule of details of where that money was spent, and Matt was just asking me about it like 5 minutes ago, and I'm going to forward it to him tomorrow, and he can share it with you guys.
Okay.
Rick, we have a schedule by vendor of what was spent hurricane-related, and when we totaled it, it amounted to about $1.2 million, and then our insurance reimbursement was approximately $200,000. So it came down, and we were very, very close to the 993, which we collected in the special assessment.
Okay. One other thing, talking about the reserve and the capital replacement fund. Online, are there things showing the expenses that came out of each of those?
Yes.
We have a schedule in the financials that we provide.
Financials, he has
We've
that.
been a little bit behind in posting the financials on the website. It's something I've talked to Jerry about in the past week, and we will have updated financials, which will include the balance sheet on the website when they're issued. I believe you have the 2017 annual audit there, but we will also be showing the changes in those accounts.
They're on there now, current, and we'll continue that trend.
We want to also show the resale capital account. So as houses are sold and money goes into that account, we'll show that as an income. And then if we use money for a project out of that account, it'll show it as an expense. So you'll be able to see all that online shortly.
The only comment I have to add to this is that your board is trying to be very transparent when it comes to these funds. If you look at your financials in prior management company, and I'm not talking about the prior management, but I'm saying about the way that we're doing business, is that there is no schedules of what makes up any number of these amounts that you see on your balance sheet. The board reached out to me, obviously, when we took over, and they said if I can help them, go back into the general ledger of the prior management company and get detailed of where all this money was spent, and get a schedule and include it in the financials so everybody can see it, because these questions are going to come up, and you have every right to ask about where these funds are being spent, So your board is very transparent, like I don't see it in other associations, but there is a schedule provided for your capital contribution resale of how much money you collect, where did you collect the money from, if there's any money spent, where the money was spent, like it's like sorted out, Same thing with the reserve. If you look at the reserve, this is how much we contribute this year, that's how much we spend. If we spend $1 million, give me details of where that money was spent. You have a detailed items by vendor, by project, by what the purpose is, by amount, by check number, by date. It's very detailed. So you'll be very happy with those reports.
Thank you.
Hey, Carmen.
Carmen Ventry, Jewelfish. I think the biggest problem is it's very deceptive when you say projected total operating income is going to be a gain of $1.5 million, okay? Because this is cash in, cash out this year versus accruals, okay? This isn't our income statement. This is how much cash we laid out, how much cash we took in. So it's very confusing, I think, to everybody. That's why I think Rick is confused why the expense is in here, because we didn't expense it necessarily this year. We expensed it last year.
When we took over the financial, that's how the financial was presented. But
I'm not
no, I'm
saying-
going to say something, and this 993, I agree with you. It shouldn't be part of their income statement. That should be part of your balance sheet as a capital contribution. And I agree with you 100%. When we engaged the new auditor, that's the agreement is we're gonna move that funds, but they're gonna start on the prelim work, for 2018 audit, and they're gonna give me the adjusting entries. I can't just go adjust it myself. So I'm gonna get that from the auditor. You won't see that on your financials. Obviously, you have a great point. Shouldn't be on your income statement. It should be part of your balance sheet. Unfortunately, that's how it was accounted for by your prior management, and we disagree with it, but I need an auditor to tell me move the money out to the balance sheet.
All I'm saying is it's just confusing for people
I agree
who
with you
aren't
100%.
accountants
I agree
to
with you 100%.
understand why there's such a big number.
And plus the other stuff, the difference if about like $500,000, obviously it's coming
Right.
from mulchings, other areas that
right,
haven't
right.
materialized, so that's part of that
Right.
surplus. The $1 million, I agree with you 100%, should be a balance sheet item.
Okay.
Great point, thank you.
But I would point out that on page 2, Carmen, with total revenues indicated, you can see that the 2018 budget was about $7,455,000. And then if you compare that to column 3, which is the 2019 budget, you're at the 7,509. Column 2 includes the special assessment, and that's why you have that variance between column 1 and column 2.
I understand that, but it's confusing to some people why it's there and the expenses aren't there, because it's cash accounting for this purposes and not on a balance sheet or an income statement where it would really be a different total altogether. That's the only thing. It's confusing if you're not an accountant to just look at it and say, how come the 993 is here but not the expense portion, because it wasn't incurred in the same year.
Correct.
I'm Linda Blaze from Puffin Drive. This may not be the point to ask a question, but maybe it is. Is there money in the budget to redo the street signs that are faded? Is there money allocated for that?
It's not directly allocated, it's under a maintenance item, and we will be looking at some of the ones that are faded.
Okay, and the second thing is, twice in the last 2 years, I've managed to slip on the mold on the sidewalks. Is there money allocated for getting the thick mold off the sidewalks?
Now, what we're doing right now, we had a contractor in, it was $155,000 to just do the Village Walk Circle, Latitude, and the Boulevard, not even up and down each sidewalk in the street. So what we're trying to do right now is come up with a tank and a spray system that hooks onto our golf cart, and we're going to try to run down the sidewalks with a chemical to see if it helps. So we're going to try some test programs and see what we can come up with that way.
I'm using Wet and Forget in some areas. It works very well, as long as you keep it off the grass. Okay, and then my third question is about the south buffer on the in the butterfly gardens. Is there any funds at all to help us plant native plants over there? We did remove all non-natives to be, in line with what was designated for out there. Is it possibility, the garden club is spending about $5,000 a year on mulch for the gardens themselves. Could you help us out with pine straw, something natural, or natural native plants for the south side, so that we can make it look like it did before we removed the non-natives?
What we'll do is look towards the city for their advice to see what we're allowed to do.
And we have the list of what we're
I
allowed to do.
understand, I know we're allowed to put certain plants in.
Right.
I don't know about the mulching and all, so we'll look into that, and we'll get back to you, Linda, on that.
Okay, so you maybe,
Linda, I've made a commitment and have talked to the board about setting aside money for nature area enhancements of about $3,000. That's an amount that has never been given to you for your efforts back there. And I've been assured that we can come up with $3,000 to enhance those plantings.
that would be lovely. And we have some ideas on how we can do it to make it really last.
So I would just recommend you submit a proposal with exact dollars, and we can review that as a board. Again, that limit at this point is about $3,000.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Any other questions from the floor? Seeing none, questions from the board about the budget?
I want to make a comment about the land care contract. It's our largest single contract, and we have negotiated that flat for 2019 versus 2018. And that's really an effort that the board undertook as well as management. So we have a savings. The contract that we had signed had an escalator, and it was scheduled to go up in 2019. And that's one example of going into a contract, renegotiating, and saving some money for the association. So that's our largest example of that. But throughout our contract file, that's what we're doing on an ongoing basis.
And that was a $44,000 savings right there.
If I may, on the sheet it says nature area enhancement, omit this line.
That was done at my request, because we didn't want to put a line item out there for every club that we have and all the requests. We have contingency money that we can use,
Okay.
so,
That we're getting more and more feedback from the residents as to the value of that area
oh,
out
I
there.
completely understand and agree, but we have a lot of people lining up.
I have made a
asking for
commitment on
money.
that for $3,000, Linda.
Thank you.
Rest assured, and that's something I'll sell the board on when you submit that proposal to us.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
I guess the only question I have, I'd like to follow up on Pat's question and see what the fees are by model on this final budget before we vote on it.
We have them, we just don't have the model name, right?
I'll have to go get it from another.
Hey, Pat, can you see me one?
I'd like to do that before we vote to make sure it truly is done.
All right, he's got it, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I've seen it on the schedule, it's
just
not in the package.
He's got it right here. There's your houses.
Can that be brought into focus a little bit better, Jerry, and maybe
cannot.
kill one of the lights?
It cannot.
You can kill that light there, Joe.
Didn't light a little later.
There you go.
Scroll down so they can see last year and this year.
So like, what is the fee on the estate series?
State series is the last one. It was 1188 last year. It's 1188 this year.
Let me go down here.
See the bottom line there? It says estates here. Just explain it.
So here's the type. Here is the 2018 quarterly fee, and here's the 2019 quarterly fee, and here's the change. So it's the same.
Did I explain it to you, Pat? Did I explain it to you?
Can you see your model up there? Is it flat?
Go up there, go look at
Which
it.
one is yours?
No, we just want to make sure that the baseline is right.
What model are you, Pat?
What model?
Classic series. You're the Oakmont Classic series.
1055, 1055.
So you're gonna be $1,053, Pat.
Those are with the last 3 quarters.
Yeah, you look at it from an annual.
You understand?
You're multiplying that by 4, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, then you increased it. Because the first quarter.
Rick is correct. Rick is correct.
No, we
Yes,
understand.
it is flat from the fourth
three
quarter
quarters.
payment. So your first quarter of 2019 will be the same as your fourth quarter 2018, and that's what this number
All right,
represents.
that was my point earlier.
Yes,
So
I know.
there is,
So in fact, there is
an increase in
There
your
is an
HOA
increase.
fee.
You're correct.
Okay, all right, and that wasn't clear, I don't think, to any of us,
No, I see what you're saying now.
all right? So,
No, what
We
they
didn't
did-
approve a budget in Q1, so then we prorated the budget for Q2 through Q4.
Because you prorated the increase for the first quarter over the last 3 quarters.
Right,
So they pay extra.
but that's the prorated amount. that
That's
you're
the
now
prorated
using
Last
for
three
next
quarters
year.
were higher than it was if you had blended it amongst the 12 months.
Well, the thing is, we've got 53,000 more expense this year. We've got 53,000.
Pat, you're good with numbers. Is that 2%? So we have a 2% increase if you
yeah,
back that out?
and I want to make sure, I'm not adverse to that, I just want to make sure that when we talk about no increase, it's not really no increase, it's really, the same as what you paid your last quarter.
Your last quarter,
Yeah.
there's no change in your last quarter
Right,
payment.
right.
It should have been a better way of wording
Yeah,
it.
no problem. I thank you. I thank you for the explanation. What's that? It should be that. Should be the, whatever style I have over there. 53, 1053? Yeah. It's really a continuation.
If you paid 1053 a quarter for the last 3 quarters,
Right.
then your budget will have a variance of that difference that you didn't pay in the first quarter. So it's impossible, that it has an increase this year.
I don't understand what you just said. I'm sorry.
What I'm saying is, if you're paying for the last 3 quarters, 1,053.
Right, right.
That's your payment for the last 3 quarters.
Right.
If you look at your income statement,
Right.
after your maintenance income, you should have a variance year to date of the difference in the first quarter. But you don't have a variance, so that means what you're paying, you're not paying 1050, you're paying more than 1053 in the last 3 quarters.
I'm sorry, you really lost me on that one, man.
Let me try, guys. What I think we're trying to get at is, in the first quarter, let's make up a number. We paid $1,000 in the first quarter. And then in the next 3 quarters, we paid $1,100, okay? So that's $4,300. So the question, I guess, is, are we going to pay $4,300 again in 2019?
No, you're going to pay 4,400.
Okay, but if the budget's exactly the same as
No,
it was in
the
2008...
payment is the same.
Why should it go up at all? I don't understand, actually, now.
You're paying $43.50 is what you'd be paying. If you paid $1,053 in 3 payments, and the first one was $1,000, this year, you're going to be paying $1,053 4 times, so it's a $53 difference, a variance, positive variance.
But yet the budget, in terms of the HOA, $7 million roughly, is exactly the same, so I guess I'm now confused.
I have to look at what the.
So...
Ahmad
and I agree, and you guys don't.
Well, the reason we're having difficulty is because right now, we're paying, I believe, $1,208 a quarter, the last 3 quarters. Let's see, on the state, we're in the estates here.
So you're paying 1208. Now,
1208. No. Listen. We are making up, we should have paid $1188 for the first quarter. We didn't.
No.
So we're paying $1208 now to make up that difference.
That's why I'm saying. So so let's say that the fees that you were paying in 2017, which is the first quarter in 2018, $1,000. But your fee should have been $1188. That $188 that you did not pay for the first quarter was distributed over the 3 quarters. So you were paying $1188 plus $188 divided by 3 to make up for that 188. That's correct. So your fee should have been more than 1188 that you're paying. Like Matt said, he's paying 1208, but his fee is 1188.
No. My October payment was $1,284.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you.
None of those numbers are $1,200.
Correct. The reason being, you're making up for the first quarter.
So it's not that the first payment of the January payment of 19
is not going to be the same as the October payment.
No, it's going to go back to this.
Right, it's going to go
Right.
back down.
At the end of the day, there's no increase.
You're going to pay the same over the whole year, 12 months. In 19 as you did in 18.
Right.
Yeah.
The other way to look at it is, like I said, there's $53,000 more expense in 2019 than 2018, and there's the exact same amount more income in 2019 and 18. No change.
All you have to look at is your top line, which is your maintenance income at the top of the budget. Has it changed from 2018? No, it has not. So that means there is no.
I want to go back to the example, because it's still not clear to me. No, I'm just going to give you an actual example. I paid $1,000 the first quarter, $1,100 the next 3 quarters to make up the increase that should have been in the first quarter.
Correct.
Okay? So I'm paying $4,300 for the year.
And you'll pay
I want to
$43 this
be
year.
sure that I'm paying $4,300 next year.
Yes, you will.
If the answer to that question is yes, I'm a happy camper.
correct.
All right, thanks. That's all I was trying to do. Thank you.
We're getting there differently. Any other questions from the board?
Not after that.
All right, hearing none, all in favor of the budget? Say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passed, Jerry.
Okay, we'll move into open forum. If anybody has any questions, not necessarily about the budget, but anything else, we have an open forum period before we adjourn.
Again. Just stand up to the mic, man.
Linda Blaze back again from Puffin. If we're just going to clean the outer rim and latitude, can't we make it in our documents that when you have your roof cleaned, you have the sidewalk cleaned in front of your house? When we moved in, the realtor actually told us it was our responsibility to keep our sidewalk clean. And usually the roof and the sidewalk get dirty at the same time. So
Most of your contractors do that, and we have been asking people to help us out in that manner. So we are going to try to concentrate on the other areas that aren't being hit.
I see, because it
And
really
Linda,
would
we
take
are
a big
also in the
burden off.
process of rewriting the covenants, and we are rewriting a lot of the guidelines that we have for ACC, and we have already included that in there, that you keep your driveway clean along with your roof.
And the
So,
sidewalk.
Yes.
The
We
sidewalk,
are.
perfect.
Well, see, I don't have a sidewalk, but I'll include it for all of you.
Lucky
Well, I
you.
don't think the sidewalk is part of the rewrite, because the sidewalk is common area. So it's very hard in the covenants to make the unit owner, the homeowner, responsible for cleaning common area. But again, we're only looking at, we haven't even seen the first draft of the rewrite, so we can't really speak for that. But it's a community effort to keep the sidewalks clean. It's a safety issue for all of us, and I don't think it's something we can push off to the homeowners.
Okay.
Guy Gervasi, Nautica. A question. I was driving home last night. Is the first sign, the first wall that you see coming in, which has a Village Walk name on it, is there a light there? Is the light broken? Because it was perfectly black.
It's out right now. And,
Okay, there is a light there, but it just broke.
I
Okay, fine.
noticed it myself this morning, and we'll have it looked at tomorrow morning. Yeah, it's always been lit up, and it's going to be lit up for Christmas also.
Well, I would say I've missed the Village Walk turn more than once because that has not been lit.
You add all of them up, it's the same fee. Any other questions, folks? Come on, we must have screwed something up. Well, okay. Well, with that said, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
If you guys have your copy and you don't want it, if you wouldn't mind setting it right here, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.